or thinking about the question of whether Xi Jinping will make a move militarily against Taiwan, and what would be the timeline of such a move. And obviously this is a unknowable question, and people continue to debate it. But in some meaningful sense, I wonder if such an invasion, or the preparation for such an invasion, which would be incredibly costly, as the ranking member very eloquently pointed out yesterday, has already begun. If the intelligence preparation of the battle space has already begun. Put differently, for over 20 years, the CCP has been attacking us, our government, our defense contractors, our technology firms, in cyberspace. That is a fact. And for a long time, these attacks were focused on theft, just robbing us of valuable technology that was then used to drive their military modernization, a really unprecedented military modernization. But another focus of attack has been gathering sensitive information on hundreds of millions of Americans, with attacks on companies like Anthem Health, the Office of Personnel Management. I'm sure Mr. Moulton and Mr. Auchincloss and anyone else who served in the military got a nice letter from OPM after our military records have been compromised. Mine is framed in my office in my basement. According to the FBI, China's vast hacking program is the world's largest, and they have stolen more Americans' personal and business data than every other nation combined. But that wasn't enough for the CCP. In the past few years, our intelligence and cybersecurity agencies have discovered that the CCP has hacked into American critical infrastructure for the sole purpose of disabling and destroying our critical infrastructure in the event of a conflict over Taiwan, for example. This is the cyberspace equivalent of placing bombs on American bridges, water treatment facilities, and power plants. There is no economic benefit for these actions. There's no pure intelligence gathering rationale. The sole purpose is to be ready to destroy American infrastructure, which would inevitably result in chaos, confusion, and potentially mass casualties. It's outrageous. It's an active and direct threat to our homeland, to our military, our ability to surge forces forward in the event of a conflict, and it's not a hypothetical. As our witnesses will testify today, the Chinese government has already done it. Our cyber warriors are doing everything they can to stop it. We are dealing with malware in water utilities, oil and gas pipelines, power grids, and other utilities in our westernmost territories and across the American homeland. And the damage that could be done by this is almost hard to imagine. We need to step up and defend our critical infrastructure, defend ourselves in cyberspace. It's a critical part of deterrence. It will take unprecedented collaboration between the public and private sectors to create the kind of layered cyber deterrence we need to prevent disaster, because it's not just a government problem, it's a whole of society problem. Our committee is called the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. That's a long title. But in a very real way, the name of our committee vastly understates the problem set. It's not just strategic competition, but a strategic threat pointed at the heart of America. If we do not address this threat, then the CCP will have the ability to turn off the lights for everyday Americans, shut down cities, and cause massive loss of American lives. That's unacceptable. I believe men and women of good faith in both parties can come together to prevent that from happening, and that's what today's hearing is all about. I now recognize the ranking member, Raja Krishnamurthy, for his opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today. I understand that General Nakasone, today is your change of command, and you made time to come and see us, and so I expect this will be Nakasone Unplugged. And so we really look forward to today's testimony. Well, look, folks, today we're going to talk about ugly gorilla and candy goo. And no, these are not my kids' Instagram handles. In fact, these are aliases used by CCP hackers working for the People's Liberation Army, otherwise known as PLA. And specifically, this wanted poster shows members of Unit 61398, whom we indicted in 2014 for hacking into American companies and stealing intellectual property. This was the first time we've ever indicted PRC nationals for computer hacking in the U.S. For years, the CCP carefully studied how the U.S. ran cyber operations to develop its own concepts for cyber warfare. Xi Jinping himself has called for the PRC to become a, quote, cyber superpower and to dominate the world through information warfare. In the last dozen years, the CCP has used cyber operations for stealing IP from companies, collecting private citizens' data, hacking into government emails, and even potentially gathering personal data from apps like TikTok. However, today we will be discussing an even darker side of the CCP's cyber warfare tactics, activities that go far beyond merely stealing information. Last May, CISA, FBI, NSA, and our Five Eyes partners released a joint advisory that CCP cyber attacks were targeting U.S. critical infrastructure, including American power and utility systems, oil and gas pipelines, and rail systems, among others. This cyber campaign, titled Volt Typhoon, has been inactive since 2021. CCP hackers access computer systems of about 24 critical entities, including in Hawaii and in Guam. The hackers even attempted to access the Texas electric grid. The purpose of the hacking was not to gather intelligence. The purpose was to install malware that, once activated, would disrupt or damage the infrastructure. You might ask why. Very simple: to potentially harm us in a time of conflict. PLA strategists openly talk about coordinating missile strikes with cyber attacks as part of its offensive operations. Former CISA Director Brandon Whale stated that, quote, Chinese attempts to compromise critical infrastructure are to prevent the U.S. from being able to project power in Asia or to cause societal chaos inside the United States. This means targeting Americans. This means we could suffer large-scale blackouts in major cities. We could lose access to our cell towers and the internet. We could lose access to clean water and fuel. So, how do we respond? First, we must be clear-eyed about the threat. The CCP's objectives for a cyber attack are not just to impede military readiness. They also seek to target civilian infrastructure to cause political, economic, and social chaos, and in the PLA's own words, quote, shake the enemy's will to war. Second, we must hunt and destroy malware. We need to discover and destroy all malicious code the CCP is attempting to hide within our networks and our critical infrastructure. In fact, less than 48 hours ago, Reuters reported that the Justice Department and the FBI were authorized to remotely disable aspects of a CCP hacking campaign underway now in order to protect our networks and devices. This is exactly the type of proactive action that we need to take, and we need to work with our partners and allies to do the same. I look forward to hopefully learning more from the witnesses about this particular counter-campaign. Third, we must deter our adversaries. While malicious Chinese code hasn't yet disrupted any of our networks, any cyber attack that results in physical damage or loss of life would grant the United States the inherent right to self-defense. If the CCP were to activate code that could cause harm, we need to make sure that we have the capability to respond and to respond decisively. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the ranking member. We are privileged to have a great panel of witnesses. The Honorable Harry Coker Jr. is the nation's second confirmed National Cyber Director, a position which came out of our work on the Cyberspace Solarium Commission. Christopher Wray is obviously the Director of the FBI. Jen Easterly is the Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and General Paul Nakasone is Commander of the United States Cyber Command and Director of the National Security Agency. I, too, want to thank you, General Nakasone. I don't want to play favorites on the panel, but when I called you to try and convince you to do this, I felt a little guilty because you're doing your change of command today, but the fact that you were willing to do this, I think, is the ultimate testament, more than any of the awards you're wearing on your uniform today, just to the type of public servant that you are, that you would be willing to do this. And like whether you're redeploying or changing command, usually you kind of drop your pack with about a week to go. You took a massive new rock in your pack because you felt so passionately about this issue. My experience working with you as chairman of the Cyberspace Solarium Commission, you were always forthcoming and generous with your time. So I just want at the outset of this hearing to thank you for an exceptional career of public service. The nation owes you a great debt of gratitude. I would stand for that. That was me lulling you into a false sense of security before the questioning begins. With that, I want to ask the witnesses to stand and raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? You may be seated. Let the record show that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you all. With thanks to the National Cyber Director, Director Wray will begin with his opening remarks, which I believe will include a major announcement. So, Mr. Wray, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Gallagher, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, and to the members of the Select Committee for inviting me here to testify today to discuss the FBI's ongoing efforts to protect our nation from actions taken by the Chinese government that threaten American safety and prosperity. Before I go on, I do want to make very clear that my comments today are not about the Chinese people, and certainly not about Chinese Americans who contribute much to our country and are frankly often the victims of Chinese Communist Party aggression themselves. Rather, when I talk about the threat posed by China, I mean the government of China, in particular led by the CCP. The CCP's dangerous actions, China's multi-pronged assault on our national and economic security, make it the defining threat of our generation. Now, when I described the CCP as a threat to American safety a moment ago, I meant that quite literally. There has been far too little public focus on the fact that PRC hackers are targeting our critical infrastructure, our water treatment plants, our electrical grid, our oil and natural gas pipelines, our transportation systems, and the risk that poses to every American requires our attention now. China's hackers are positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities if and when China decides the time has come to strike. They're not focused just on political and military targets. We can see from where they position themselves across civilian infrastructure that low blows aren't just a possibility in the event of a conflict. Low blows against civilians are part of China's plan. But the PRC's cyber onslaught goes way beyond pre-positioning for future conflict. Today, and literally every day, they're actively attacking our economic security, engaging in wholesale theft of our innovation and our personal and corporate data. Nor is cyber the only PRC threat we face. The PRC cyber threat is made vastly more dangerous by the way they knit cyber into a whole-of-government campaign against us. They recruit human sources to target our businesses, using insiders to steal the same kinds of innovation and data that their hackers are targeting, while also engaging in corporate deception, hiding Beijing's hand in transactions, joint ventures, and investments to do the same. And they don't just hit our security and economy, they target our freedoms, reaching inside our borders across America to silence, coerce, and threaten some of our citizens and residents. But I can assure you, the FBI is laser-focused on the threat posed by Beijing. We've got cyber, counterintelligence, criminal, and WMD experts, just to name a few, defending against it. And we're working in partnership with the private sector, partnership with our allies abroad, and partnership at all levels of the U.S. government, especially the NSA, Cyber Command, CISA, and ONCD, whose leaders I'm honored to be here with today. In fact, just this morning, we announced an operation where we and our partners identified hundreds of routers that had been taken over by the PRC state-sponsored hacking group known as Volt Typhoon. The Volt Typhoon malware enabled China to hide, among other things, pre-operational reconnaissance and network exploitation against critical infrastructure like our communications, energy, transportation, and water sectors, steps China was taking, in other words, to find and prepare to destroy or degrade the civilian critical infrastructure that keeps us safe and prosperous. And let's be clear, cyber threats to our critical infrastructure represent real-world threats to our physical safety. So, working with our partners, the FBI ran a court-authorized on-network operation to shut down Volt Typhoon and the access it enabled. Now, this operation was an important step, but there's a whole lot more to do, and we need your help to do it. To quantify what we're up against, the PRC has a bigger hacking program than that of every major nation combined. In fact, if you took every single one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts and focused them exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1. So as we sit here, while important budget discussions are underway, I will note that this is a time to be keeping ahead of the threat by investing in our capabilities rather than cutting them. We need to ensure that we sustain and build on the gains that we've made that have enabled us to take actions like the Volt Typhoon operation I just mentioned. The budgets that emerge from discussions underway now will dictate what kind of resources we have ready in 2027, a year that, as this committee knows all too well, the CCP has circled on its calendar. And that year will be on us before you know it. As I've described, the PRC is already, today, putting their pieces in place. I do not want those watching today to think we can't protect ourselves. But I do want the American people to know that we cannot afford to sleep on this danger. As a government and a society, we've got to remain vigilant and actively defend against the threat that Beijing poses. Otherwise, China has shown it will make us pay. Thank you, and look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you, sir. Director Coker, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Gallagher, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, and distinguished members of the Select Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I have been honored to lead the Office of the National Cyber Director, ONCD, in the White House for a little over a month now, and I am grateful to Congress and your leadership, Mr. Chairman, for creating this office. And Mr. Ranking Member, I appreciated our conversation yesterday and your abiding interest in our workforce challenges. ONCD was established by Congress to advise the President on cybersecurity policy and strategy. In particular, we coordinate many important agencies with cyber missions across the government to ensure federal coherence on cybersecurity policy. We have budgetary responsibilities to ensure the government is making appropriate investments in cyber defense and resilience, and we focus on implementation and ensuring the President's strategy is successfully and transparently executed. Coordination and collaboration are central to our ethos. Cybersecurity remains a team effort, and I am proud to be testifying with some of our nation's finest leaders, Director Easterly, Director Wray, and General Nakasone. This hearing is timely because the American public needs to be aware of the threat to our critical infrastructure. Our intelligence community has noted that a PRC threat actor is pre-positioning to, in the event of conflict, conduct disruptive and potentially destructive attacks. The PRC threat actor, Volt Typhoon, as it has been named by a private sector partner, has conducted cyber operations